everybody, and welcome back to Art Historian. Today we're going to continue talking about the Renaissance era of art history and talking about the artistic genius who was Michelangelo by looking at his sculpture David. So I think just to dip our toes in the water a little bit, I'm going to start with a sculpture that Michelangelo created in between 1498 and 1499 called the Pietà. Please excuse my probably mispronunciation of that word. This is a scene that has definitely been depicted before. We can look at depictions that came from the Middle Ages. We can look at a lot of different depictions. But what is special about this one is that it's the first sculpture to depict this scene. And what it is actually showing is a scene of Jesus being taken down from the cross and held by his mother Mary. So this is the body of Jesus after his death in his mother's lap. This is something that was used as a devotional prayer for Catholics at the time and before this time period as well. I believe that Michelangelo actually did 4 of these pieces, but this is the first one that he produced, and it's the one that the West considers to be most important. This clearly has some influences from the Renaissance era. It is very human, it's very relatable. It kind of blurs the line between these exalted figures and we as humans. And you can see the triangular figure depicting Holy Trinity, as we saw in Leonardo da Vinci's The Virgin of the Rocks. We can see that Michelangelo, he gave Mary a very sorrowful expression, which was kind of a creative decision. It was an artistic decision at the time. And one thing that is new about this is that she is depicted as a young, attractive woman rather than a woman in her 50s. And that was kind of to pay homage to her. Youth was considered very important, and he wanted to portray Mary in a beautiful light. That is not to say that age is not beautiful. That was just the trend of the time. So one thing that was a little bit creative about Mary's expression in this sculpture is that she is filled with peaceful sorrow. Other artists kind of focused on her hysteria, but instead Michelangelo has her in this kind of like beautiful angelic state, and it's very tender, and it's kind of this moment of peace after the storm where she is just looking at her son. We can also see that she's a little bit larger than Jesus proportionally, and that's to emphasize her status as a mother to Jesus. One of my favorite stories about this piece, and it is an aside, this is not probably going to be on any of your tests. It's just kind of a fun fact, honestly. This is the only sculpture that Michelangelo ever signed, and that is because, as I've talked about his bold, fiery personality, there were rumors that this piece was created by a different artist of the same name. Michelangelo got so prideful that he carved his name into Mary's sash, and he felt so remorseful about it that after the fact he never signed another sculpture, because he felt that he was drawing attention away from what the sculpture was supposed to be about, to bring the attention on himself, and that is just really humbling to me. So this piece is still used as a devotional practice by some, and it was really a turning point in Michelangelo's fame. As you can see, it's just technically beautiful. It's amazing. This piece was carved out of one giant block of marble, and you can see that he has gotten the soft skin and the draping clothes so right that it's hard not to see why this piece was immediately infamous. We're also going to look a little bit back at Donatello's bronze sculpture of David just to highlight some of the key differences between early Renaissance art and high Renaissance art. So, Michelangelo's David is a marble sculpture created between the years 1501 and 1504. So, to give you an idea of when that was, it was shortly before the creation of the Sistine Chapel. It was carved out of a giant slab of marble, which was actually rumored to have been named the Giant. And from what I've heard, it was believed that no one could make sense of this giant slab of marble. So this statue is 17 feet tall. So to compare this with the David that we saw previously by Donatello, that one was 5 feet tall. So this one is 12 feet taller than that one was. In similar fashion, David is depicted in the nude. However, we can see right off the bat there are a lot of differences. Donatello's David was depicted as a prepubescent young man, and Michelangelo's David is in his physical prime, clearly. We do see some similarities, and they are both in this contrapposto stance, which is classic for the Renaissance period and definitely a nod towards ancient Greece and ancient Rome. But the context is very much shifted between these two. In Donatello's David, that depicts the scene right after Goliath has been killed. So we see David's foot on Goliath's head. We see him kind of looking down. In Michelangelo's David, we see him as he is about to throw the stone at Goliath, and we can see this focus in his eyes. It looks like maybe he's just like tossed the stone up in the air. He's very confident, very cocky, and that is very typical depiction for Michelangelo. As I've said before, we see his kind of bold personality coming through in his art in ways that we have not seen before this point. And so there is a lot of intensity in this piece. So before this point, as we can see in Donatello's David, it was not super fashionable to depict characters in this super muscular form, and that is something that Michelangelo really brought to the table with his interest in anatomy. You can see definitely an emphasis on Michelangelo's David's musculature, and that is further emphasized by his height. And one thing that is really technically genius about this sculpture is that a lot of thought given to how it was going to be viewed, because its height is so towering above any human. Michelangelo knew that it was going to be viewed looking upward, and so he's made the upper half of the body, the torso, a little bit bigger. So when we view it front on, we're not actually viewing it in the way that it was designed to be viewed, because we can see just slight proportion disagreements. However, if you were looking at that from the bottom up, that would make a lot of sense to your eyes. Another thing that is super important to note about this is, although Donatello's David and Michelangelo's David depict the same figure, they were created for very different reasons. Whereas Donatello's David was created for the Medici family as kind of a show of their own power. Michelangelo's David was kind of taken as a symbol of the new Florentine Republic, which were kind of flaunting their independence from the influence of the Medici family. Given that context, we can see the intensity of this piece grow. It's almost showing that confidence of victory before the slingshot has even been fired. Thank you for watching video number 2 on Michelangelo. Next time we are going to talk about Raphael, who was a little bit of a party boy. He kind of grows the persona of artists during the Renaissance period and inspires a new era of art history. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video educational, subscribe to the channel, like the video, click the bell, all the things.